All right, we'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. We're very grateful that you're all here to support our performance. The kids have all worked really, really hard on this performance, and the costumes were all made by their families and them, so definitely if you get a chance afterwards to compliment them on their costumes and their creativity, please do so. If you'll take a minute now to silence your cell phones, you can go ahead and take as many pictures as you'd like. Our sound system is not that great, so try not to make too much noise out there. We have been really working on using our stage voices and projecting, so hopefully you'll be able to hear us. The commercials that happen halfway through, those are all the kids' ideas and creations, so you'll definitely want to compliment them on that afterwards as well. After the performance, you can enjoy some refreshments and talk to the performers about what they've learned and what they've worked on. I am extremely proud of all of the performers. It's really hard to get up in front of a big audience like this and take some risks and speak or act or do different things, or even just show your face in front of a big audience like this. So we want to really congratulate them on that effort and encourage that. And our school does a great job of that through the Leader in Me program and focusing on public speaking and using those habits. So we're grateful for that. I also did not put in the program a thank you to Tara Bloom for our set pieces. So we want to definitely thank her. She did a great job on that, and our sign outside looked fantastic. So thank you, Tara. And I think we are ready to start. So I would first like to introduce our special guest, Chief Wilma Mankiller.
When I was a child growing from the isolated Cherokee community of Mankiller Flats, we had no telephone, television, or other direct link to the outside world except a battery-operated radio. Like generations of Cherokees before us, we relied on storytelling to pass cultural and historical information. Storytelling was also used to entertain others, especially young people, and to teach the important value lessons. These lessons were honesty, personal responsibility, and the importance of sharing. From tiny native Alaskan villages to the great Iroquois nation, Native people have an astounding array of wonderful stories. As long as these stories survive, the oral histories will survive. No stories are more important than the stories of Rabbit, the trickster hero.
How Rabbit Tricked Otter. Long ago, the animals did many of the same things that people do. They especially loved to dance. One time, the animals decided to hold a dance to honor the animal with the most beautiful fur coat. They called a great council and they talked for a long time about whom to honor at the honor dance. Some animals had short fur, while others were covered with long, silky hair. Some animals had spots, some had stripes. Raccoon boasted of the stripes on his tail. And Skunk was especially proud of his brilliant black and white fur. But finally, it was decided that the animal with the most beautiful fur coat was Otter. Now Rabbit was the messenger. This meant it was his job to travel up the river and tell Otter about the dance and bring him back down to the council house. Rabbit knew that his own fur coat was nothing very special, although he was quite proud of the long curly tail that Creator had given him. Nevertheless, it made him jealous that Otter was going to have an honor dance. As Rabbit traveled up the river to Otter's house, more and more he thought, what a funny joke it would be if he could trick Otter into staying away from the dance and fool everyone into thinking that he was Otter. There was only one way to do that, and that was to steal Otter's fur coat. Rabbit reached Otter's house and told him about the dance. Otter is a very shy and humble fellow, and it made his heart feel good to know that the animals wanted to honor him in this way. He agreed to travel back down the river with Rabbit to the council house. They hadn't gone very far when Rabbit decided to camp for the night. "This is a sacred place," Rabbit said. "It will be good for you to sleep and dream in such a place the night before you dance. Something happens here that doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. Sometimes at night, fire falls out of the sky. That is why they call this place the Fire Falling from the Sky Spot." Otter had never heard of the fire falling from the sky spot, but then he had not traveled very much. He thought maybe Rabbit knew more about these kinds of things, and so he listened when Rabbit told him what to do. "Take off your fur coat," said Rabbit, "and hang it in a tree away from the river. You wouldn't want the falling fire to burn a hole in it. And when you go to sleep, lie down right next to the water. If the fire falls from the sky, jump in the river and you will be safe." Otter took off his fur coat and hung it in a tree. And when he went to sleep, he stretched out right beside the river. Rabbit waited, and when Otter was sound asleep, Rabbit took a curved piece of bark and scraped all the coals from the campfire into it. Then, standing over Otter, he threw the coals into the air as high as he could. "Fire falling from the sky!" cried Rabbit. Otter saw the coals raining down and he jumped into the river. Rabbit snatched Otter's fur coat and ran. The next day, Rabbit was back at the council house, and there was no sign of Otter. When the sun went down, the fire in the council house was built into a great roaring blaze. The drums began to play and the singers called for everyone to dance. Meanwhile, Rabbit disguised himself as Otter. First, he pulled down his long ears and tied them into a knot underneath his chin. Then he eased into Otter's coat. Rabbit thought he looked pretty good. He was just coming out to lead the honor dance into the council house when he remembered something. He stopped and thought about his nose, with that split running right down the middle. If the animals saw Rabbit's nose, they would know he was an otter. So Rabbit put one paw over his nose, and that's how he danced all night long. When anyone asked him what he was doing, Rabbit just said, "This is the latest dance." And since everyone had gathered to honor Otter, they respected this strange dance, and pretty soon all the animals were dancing with one paw over their noses. Except for Bear. Bear was a good friend of Otter's, and all the evening the idea grew in Bear's mind that this was not his friend. So when Bear saw his chance, he danced over to Rabbit and knocked that paw away. Everyone saw Rabbit's split nose, and with one voice they screamed, "Rabbit!" Rabbit threw Otter's coat down and ran. But Bear was so angry that Rabbit would play such a mean trick on Otter that when Rabbit dashed by, Bear reached out with his great paw and snatched Rabbit's long curly tail right off.
Stop.
The other animals took Otter's coat and began traveling up the river to look for him. They found Otter coming toward the council house, and he was glad to get his coat back. But he wasn't very sorry about missing his dance. Something new had come into Otter's life. Until Rabbit had tricked him into jumping into the river, Otter had never been swimming, and he discovered that he liked it better than anything else. So if you are looking for Otter's grandchildren, look in the rivers and the lakes and the streams, because all the otters are living there still. And even now, you will see that Rabbit's grandchildren do not have the beautiful tail that Creator gave them. All that is left is a puffy white puff of fur. Why Possum's tail is bare. Long ago, in the beginning days of the world, Possum didn't look the way he does now. Creator gave Possum a beautiful, bushy, furry tail, and Possum was very vain about this tail. He bragged about it all the time and sang about it at every dance, until Rabbit, who didn't have much of a tail left since Bear had pulled his off, became jealous and decided to play a trick on Possum. Rabbit went to the other animals and said, "Let's have an honor dance for Possum's tail." But all the other animals said, "We are tired of hearing of Possum sing about his tail." "If we have an honor dance for Possum," said Rabbit, "and we let him sing about his tail all night, perhaps he will not talk about it so much from now on." Well, the other animals said that they had never thought about it quite like that, and maybe Rabbit was right, and so they agreed to have an honor dance for Possum's tail. Rabbit traveled to Possum's house and gave him the news. "You mean I can sit where everyone can see me?" said Possum. "Oh yes," said Rabbit. "You will have a special seat of honor right next to the council fire." "Do you mean I can sing and dance and talk about my tail all night?" asked Possum. "Oh yes," said Rabbit. "That's what the dance is for, to honor your beautiful tail." Well, of course, this pleased Possum very much, and he said that he would come. Rabbit said, "I will send Cricket to you on the day of the dance to comb and brush the fur on your tail so it will look its best." Possum liked this idea as well. So Rabbit went to Cricket, who is such an expert hair cutter that the Cherokee word for him means the barber. Rabbit told him exactly how to fix the hair on Possum's tail. On the day of the dance, Cricket went to Possum's house. Possum stretched out and closed his eyes, and Cricket began to comb and brush the fur on Possum's tail until it was its silkiest and shiniest. "Possum," said Cricket, "I'm going to wind a red string around the fur on your tail very, very tight, all the way to the tip. It will keep the hair smooth until it is time for you to dance. Remember, Possum, don't take the string off until just before you dance." That night, when the sun went down, the drums began to play and the singers to call. Everyone gathered at the council house. Possum sat in a special seat of honor right next to the council fire, where the light was brightest. Soon the other animals began to call,
Possum dance! Possum dance!
So Possum reached around behind him and pulled off the red string. With that, every hair on his tail fell off, but Possum didn't know it. He leaped into the circle of firelight and began to dance, singing, "See my beautiful bushy furry tail?" The animals began to laugh. Possum sang louder, "See how it sweeps the ground?" And the animals laughed harder. Possum decided maybe they hadn't heard him right, and so he sang louder, and the animals laughed harder. Finally, Possum realized that something must be wrong. He looked around behind him, and instead of the beautiful, bushy, furry tail that he had always known, there was a long, red, skinny, hairless tail. Possum was so surprised and humiliated, all he could do was fall to the ground and grin helplessly, which Possum still does whenever you take him by surprise. And Possum's grandchildren all have red, skinny, hairless tails to this day.